I'm sure you already know, but plants photosynthesize. Plants take in sunlight energy, and they use that sunlight energy to make their own food. For the most part, that food is sugar or glucose. So in order to do this, of course, light energy is needed. We also need CO2 and water. The water, remember, comes from the roots of the plant. A byproduct of the process that we're talking about is oxygen, and that will exit via the leaves. So what do plants do with this sugar once they've got it? Well, they're going to need to respire, because they need to grow, they need to move. They're going to need a lot of energy to do those sort of things. So they need to respire. But apart from that, they're going to need to build other complex molecules like starch for storage, cellulose for cell walls. They're going to need lipids, okay, and then they're going to need to build amino acids so that they can actually grow. So plants, or what we call autotrophs, are what we call a sink for carbon dioxide. Okay, they will take it in, and then they will store the carbon within their tissues. Whenever we have a store of carbon, we call that store a sink. What else can happen to CO2? Well, of course, we've got these huge bodies of water around us called oceans, and we've got very large lakes in certain parts of the world. A lot of that CO2 can be uptaken by these water bodies. So what happens? What's the chemistry behind it? How does that work? So initially, CO2 will dissolve in water, but most will combine with water to become carbonic acid. Here you can see CO2 in the atmosphere striking the ocean. When it's windy and when the ocean is rough, you get a higher uptake of this CO2 into the oceans. So what happens is the CO2 dissolves within the water. CO2 again is a polar molecule, so it will dissolve. And what tends to happen, it will combine with water, it will react with the water, and it will form this molecule here, which is called carbonic acid. Carbonic acid is pretty unstable. It is an acidic substance, and it's pretty unstable. And what will happen to it is it will start to break apart. And those hydrogen ions, or those protons, H+ ions, will start to break away into the ocean. Now, when we talk about the pH of a substance, like water or any other substance around the world, we're talking about substances that are acidic, we're talking about substances that are alkaline. What makes a substance alkaline or acidic is the concentration of these protons or hydrogen ions that we see within the water. The more protons there are, the more acidic they are. So I'm hoping here that you can see that there is a strong link between water dissolving the CO2, that CO2 combining to make carbonic acid, and then that carbonic acid breaking apart and releasing those protons or those hydrogen ions into the water, which are going to increase the acidity or decrease the pH, which means the same thing. So let's go back to those autotrophs very briefly. We know that plants or autotrophs have leaves. On the top of those leaves, they have, this is the inside of the leaf, and this here is a section through that leaf. You can see here these long cells. These are palisade cells. You can see here the spongy mesophyll cells. And you can see at the top here that there is a stomatal pore. Most stomatal pore are actually found on the bottom of a leaf, but in this one you can see there is stomata there. CO2 is going to move into the leaves through there and move into these palisade cells, which is where the bulk of that photosynthesis goes on. Okay, remember CO2 is going to move from its concentration gradient from high down to low. Thanks for listening.